Namaste. Hi, I'm Bruce Benefiel, also known as Zendor, and welcome to One World. Namaste is a Sanskrit word. It means God in me recognizes God in you. Something I think we can all recognize in each other. We all got a heart, we've all got emotions, we all share that. We all share this planet, we all share this one world. Tonight we've got some interesting guests. We've got Rachel Mueller and Tom Marsala. Rachel has a very unique integrative psychodynamic synthesis. And in actuality, she's an empath, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And Tom is a visionary artist who also has a unique perspective on life, in that he was and has been a UFO contactee, and he's got some interesting things to talk about as far as other cultures, not just our own. And with no further ado, Rachel, Tom, glad to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
Rachel, with the empathic abilities that you have, first of all, explain those a little bit for our viewing audience, because a lot of people probably don't know what that is.
Okay. Basically, empathing is the ability to feel what another person is feeling. And as the capacity to do so becomes more and more accurate, you can almost become the energy of that person. So when I'm working with someone, whether it's a friend or someone who's a client, I am still enough and objective enough in my being, in my person, that I can sense what is going on in their body or in their mind. I don't necessarily need to know what their thoughts are, but I pick up on an energetic level what is going on in their body, and then I address it.
On an energetic level, that's at a feeling.
Right. I feel it. I sense it.
Well, normally we've got like 5 senses that we work with our 10% brain usage. You may be more open to the other, let's say, 54 senses that are the other 90% of the brain.
Right. Well, you're certainly forging in other parts of the brain. You are using other senses. You're using your 5 senses to a heightened level, plus using the intuitive sense, which we know is the 6th sense.
Right. Which I think probably encompasses
those 54. How many ever, right?
You know, mathematically the ratio works.
Right.
How did you get started with that? What brought you into that empathic ability?
Well, it's something I believe that we're all born with. And what I recognized, which was very confusing at a very young age, was I was doing it as a child. And I think that a lot of children do that with their parents. They sense mom or dad is upset. Well, they sense it. They don't have words for it, even before they're speaking language.
Sure.
They don't have words for it.
I've got 4 kids, and I can, each one of them, I knew that they could sense when things were going on, and they would respond certain ways, and they just pick up on the energy.
Well, that's just it. And it's all energy. And how we translate it as we grow up and are socialized in or out of our innate ability to empath depends on what our experiences are. And I had that as a child. I was always doing that with my family and in school, which was very, very confusing. And at some point early on, I shut down because it became too confusing.
Yeah.
You become so open that you begin to know what's going on with this person or that person, and then it's easy not to know where your boundaries are.
Right.
And so, am I feeling that, or am I feeling that for such and such a person?
Yeah.
Or for
I knew several years ago when I started working with people and reopening those empathic abilities that I also had as a child. I was asking for them to give me their pain and their anger or whatever.
And it's very easy to want to do that.
And a couple of days later, it was like, who the hell am I? You really don't know. Until you realize, hey, okay, I asked for it, here it is, now I got to deal with it and give it back to you.
And that's very important what you said. You've asked for it. And we have to be consciously aware of what we're asking for. if I were empathing day to day and not knowing what I'm asking for, you know, I would be a mess and have become that, because there were times when I wasn't completely educated enough in my understanding of it to just take it on and walk around with pain until I realized it's not my pain, or I couldn't possibly be creating all this pain. And then I became in choice about it. And that's when it becomes most effective for myself and whoever I'm working with.
Tom, now you've got kind of a little different perspective on things. And I don't know that at a conscious level, you know, you really had a choice or a way to follow, or what prompted you to get involved with the other civilizations that you've experienced. How did that first begin, though?
I was working as a doorman at a fairly famous club in Kansas City called 100 West, down in the Country Club Plaza. We were closing one night, and I said to a very good friend of mine, Jerry Dennis, I've got to get out of here. I don't know what it is, but something's pulling me. I've never studied anything along those lines, and never even thought about UFOs. It was the farthest thing from my mind, because I was always painting pictures, or when I'd want to relax, I'd fly to some country and get off in the jungle and just, you know, play and have a good time. Before I knew it, I'm in the car. It's about 4 in the morning. By the time I get to 199th Street, it was about an hour's drive. I fling the door open, and I'm tearing myself up on the barbed wire, just trying to focus to get to a place. And as I went over the rise and come down and worked my way through the trees, there was a scout ship and 3 humanoid beings standing there. For a person who's had a background of 30-some years in martial arts, at that time it was only a few years, and started when I was 8, and I was about 21 at the time. It was 1969. Fear had kind of left me on levels. But at this particular evening, I found out what fear was all about, because I was confronting something I couldn't deal with. I couldn't fight. I couldn't overcome the opponent. There wasn't any opponent to overcome, but in my feeble mind at that time, you see this and you say, whoa, is this happening, and why is this me? Why did this happen? I wasn't expecting this. It was like I was overcome. I'd never sensed that in my entire life. So it was real unique. And when they realized I was there, and I had made the contact point, and they put their focus of energy on me, all those fears and insanity went away, and it was just like I had found home. The great aspect of it was, what made my legs so weak and nervous was I was going through an antibacterial screening process at a great distance, and it affects your nervous system temporarily, and you feel weird, and all of a sudden you find yourself buckling a little bit, and once we got past that, I felt real good. It was like an aphrodisiac or something, I don't know, but it wasn't I was overcome, it just, I felt good, so my own body responded in kind, yes.
Now, let me get back to Rachel for just a moment. With these abilities, how do you see them, I mean, granted, you discussed the fears that you went through and dealing with it. How do you see that with others in the community, in a local community level? How do you see those abilities or those things integrating?
Well, I think, you know, using the word integration is an important thing. We all have the capacity to be open enough to be connected to others. But we first have to be integrated within ourselves, and we have to be in integrity about it. And when you're in integrity, when you know who you are, when those parts of you that have been somehow splintered off because of trauma and experience become aligned within an integration process, then you have a sense of self and a sense of knowing what you want. And then you're in integrity. When you're in integrity, being empathic or being able to be, you know, we can use the word psychic on other levels because that's more of a mental level. It creates in the community a sense of oneness and a sense of being united and union. And it doesn't need to be, you know, overflowing with lots of feelings. It's just a matter of being respectful and non-judgmental with those who you're in surrounding with.
And if you see something that needs to be done, you go do it.
Well, no.
Okay.
No, or at least I'll say this.
Okay.
I would at least make myself available to be a facilitator for it, because
Right,
other
just because you do,
people-
just because you see it
rather than
doesn't mean
impose
that,
it, right.
Yeah.
What I see that would be right for me is what I'm responsible for. But in working with others in the community, it's very important to be accepting of what other people's agendas are.
Right.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Good.
Tom, what kinds of, now I know that you have been not only open to that particular culture, but others. What did you see the common features in those limited views of those societies that you had? Or
First of all, let me preface that by saying that I'm sure the viewers are sitting in anticipation, wanting to know how these things come about and what it's like to be on other planets and what the ride's like and all these type of things. And you could go on for hours talking about that. I think everybody that's ever been interviewed on that level has been able to explain that to everyone's satisfaction. It's not the ride, it's what happens at the other end and the learning process between point A and point B.
right.
The cultures that we live in are very, very restrictive. They're restrictive on a mental level, they're restrictive on an emotional level, and they're restrictive just about in every way I can imagine. And as a race of people who have evolved, we've come a long way. I think our country and many other countries that have joined us in like and kind have opened the door for a lot of advancement. And there has been a lot of advancement, and there will continue to be.
Is there any reason why these other civilizations don't have any open involvement? I mean, I've often heard that we're kind of on a universe quarantine because of our own barbaric nature. Is that in essence
Not only
true?
our barbaric nature, our somewhat, it's not we're limited mentally. Our scientific capacities are very clever for our youth. Theirs is extremely advanced. I mean, their culture, the food is taken care of. You spend all your time working on the cultural aspects, your mind, your body, your soul, your communication with people, your rapport with everything from animals to fish to whatever. And everything responds in kind. When we greet somebody here, we shake hands. When you greet somebody there, you meld. You know that human being instantly, like you've known them for your whole life. And there are no barriers with anybody. No walls come up, nothing.
Now, those experiences do happen here, too.
They certainly
I've
do.
had it.
And it's even what we're working on. It's creating that, if I may.
Sure.
I mean, that's
You may.
Thank you very much.
That's exactly what it's all
Thank you.
about.
I'm glad I asked. That's what I'm working towards in what I do, is to create that relationship between people in being able to sense people not from here solely, but from their heart and from what they sense in their own energy field, and I think more the society is opening up so that we can become more aware and more respective and more melding with the environment, with the animals, with
It's like balancing the
Right.
resources.
Right.
On last week's show, we had Diane Fasinelli and Hal Metcalf. Hal Metcalf is the Director of Corporate Relations for Western International University. And Diane also works for the Arizona Humanities Council as the Resource Center Director. They both gave their examinations and extrapolations on the same types of things, of balancing the resources. And the Western International, on a business, instructional, educational level, is teaching how to build that world community from a humanistic standpoint of taking care of those things. Do you think that, I mean, by taking care of those things, I mean being able to get to the point where we're balanced in the resources, where we have the ability to take care of each other?
I think it's obvious to everybody in the United States, from children to our elderly, especially our elderly, who have seen more than we have, that we're all moving in that direction. Everybody's starting to take a stand collectively where they didn't before. I mean, they started loosening up like in the 30s when Prohibition was around, because it was the first drug introduced to them that would loosen people up to where they would even talk and think of creating or trying new things, whether it was right or wrong, and a lot of the times it was wrong. They were trying to communicate in their own rudimentary sense.
For Western man, anyway.
For Western man, yeah. And then the drug culture come in the 60s and the mind-expanding experiences, and that kind of opened things, the can of worms, with just a little more to where people could realize, well, hey, I really can express myself this way or this way or this way.
Now,
then the
that
drug slipped away, and then it stayed in people's mind, and they started floating with it, and it's working very well today.
With the 60s experience, do you find that, I mean, it seemed like a lot of the ecological movements began at that time.
You bet.
Which is integrated also or similar to the Native American, and not just necessarily in the United States, but in the Western Hemisphere, of their process of becoming more in touch with Mother Earth and the Father Spirit and all that.
According to the extraterrestrials, there have been cultures on this planet, which they are, by the way, our direct blood relatives. They come from the same bloodline, but they're removed so many millennia that their genetic structure has changed just a little bit, but they don't look any different than you or I, except they have that special spark in appearance, because naturally they've lived longer and they're working with things we're not. We're working under a lot of handicaps here.
As I was talking with Rachel about the integration of the other 90% of our brain, is this kind of what the genetic leap for us is in the near future, of connecting with the rest of that?
The genetic leap's no problem. As the conversations I've had with them, and believe me, I quizzed them heavily. I mean, I've asked questions that I never thought I'd even ask somebody, and got direct answers. It's kind of like dealing with the ancient Chinese. They always have a witticism and an answer that's just right on time. You couldn't deny it if for any reason, because it just makes too much sense.
Right.
But we're coming along real well on this planet. There's a lot of people. I'm not the only contactee out there, and in my life, I kept it to myself for over 20-some years. I didn't want anybody to know about it because, for one, I was afraid to talk. If it hadn't been for good people like yourself and a few other people that I've met since I've been here in Arizona, I would have gone on and never even mentioned anything to anybody, because for me it was personal. I've never trusted governments because they fear too much. They're perfectly founded for being that way. I don't, I have no problem with what the government's doing or what they're trying to hide or not hide. It's totally out of my ballpark. All I know is that for some miraculous reason, which I'm quite thankful for, they changed my life around by contacting me to begin with. And you always say to yourself, why me? Well, after a few years, why not me?
Why not?
I was the one that was receptive. I was the one that went out there and put it on the line. And believe me, when you step on that craft and it heads off into the universe, you have a lot of thoughts going through your head. You separate the chaff from the rest of it. And you worry because you don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah, because you're not in control.
It's all for nothing,
all.
because when you get there and you see just how unbelievably perfect everything is, you don't want to come back. But you can't stay there because I just don't know enough. I don't have enough of what it takes. I can't love that deeply, and I can love a lot. But I don't have that innate capacity. There's some kind of little wall that's always there, and they know it, and I know it. Someday, perhaps, I'll grow to the point to where they'll invite me to stay for a period of time so I can grow, and I'm looking forward to that. But I'm happy with what I've had. I wouldn't wish it on anybody because it's very difficult to go there, come back here, and then try to function like a normal human being when you've seen the better end.
It's like somebody who's had an enlightening experience of even, we talked about the white light experiences of going into the white light and then coming back here and, realizing that there's so much more, that level of love is so near, yet it's so distant.
It's the love that made it happen for them.
Yeah.
They used to live here. We keep destroying ourselves. There's been cultures on this planet, and there's a lot of scientific evidence that's been suppressed by many organizations and many countries, from Peru, South America, Central America, all over
in the
the
New
place.
Age literature, we see a lot of Lemuria,
Atlantis,
Atlantis, and
Just
Ruins.
too many
Yeah.
archaeological sites have been kept under wraps that are holding information that, if we just had it, would advance us beyond our
well,
wildest
even the
dreams.
Mormons, they've got the Book of Mormon that is supposedly a history of the peoples of South America migrating up this way. And there's all kinds of things, but they can't find them. So what happened to them?
Yeah, well, they just keep destroying themselves. It's not that we're not intelligent. We don't have the capacity to love or understand. We let greed, fear, emotion, uncontrolled emotion, and our inability to reason logically, and our inability to love totally. I mean, when a dog comes up to you, his tail's a-wagging, and he's rolling, man, and he's drooling all over the place, and he says, "You just too much. I got to lick all over you. I love you."
Yeah.
And you get down here hugging on this little pup and having a good time. It's instantaneous. Instantaneous love. People don't do that.
Well,
How do you
infants
see
do.
Infants do,
Well, yes,
until they're
you
taught
see,
how not
and-
to.
Well,
and
and that's just it. I mean,
Yeah.
human beings have been socialized out of their
Be
innate
as little
ability
children.
to... Yes.
How can we do that from your perspective
Well,
in moving through those?
the important thing is to find out within the body what those traumas were that started to create our veil, our walls, the little walls that grew up, that we built as we were growing up. You know, we saw someone look at us sideways, and we just figured, empathing, intuiting that it wasn't good. So to protect ourselves out of fear. Now, the saying is that where there is love, there is no fear. So what is important is to find out what the trauma was, where it originated. And what happens is when we experience a trauma, we sort of pocket the energy. Oh, it was a scary thing, we put it over here. Oh, that was a scary thing, we put it over here. And as we grow up, we become beings that are like this. And the process is to bring it all back into one. Then when we're all in one, then that love is something that flows freely, because...
It flows
and
freely.
it flows freely, too.
Right.
Because we do not have the fear. And we can recognize that the fear is just things that we've created because we didn't have an explanation. We didn't have a communication with what created it in the first place. So once we can educate ourselves to ourselves and be non-judgmental and know that there is a great force within us that's very potent, and that it is that love, that is that energy that creates the universe and flows through us and the beings that you've experienced, that's when we live that, in essence, on this planet as well.
It seems like every guest, or practically every guest that I've had on the show, that has reached that point of talking about the non-judgment, that seems to be the key.
Well, judgment is a wall.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest wall that we have, is when we judge, it's because we're in fear. And if we can judge somebody, we can push them that much further away from us so that we do not have to feel threatened. And non-judgmentalness is a great leap into the void. I mean, it's an act of faith. You have to know that there's something that creates
Really.
the warmth and makes our environment something that is a loving environment.
From your perspective, Tom, do you have anything that you can share on how we can create that? From their perspective, have they shared what can be done on a simple level?
Yes. The word fear is the key. Having spent 35 years in martial arts and studying almost every form there is, and some that aren't known for my own personal reasons, I learned these things so I wouldn't fear. I'm not saying I don't fear totally, but I'm less to freak out in a tight situation than most people are, because I enjoy that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable there.
Keeps you sharp.
There's nothing to fear. They're not going to hit me, not even with a baseball bat in there, 'cause I'm simply not going to be there.
Yeah.
That's what the training's all about. Anybody can learn it. People have to learn how to give up the fear, how to protect themselves, how to project themselves so they don't have to protect themselves. And they won't do that.
Yeah, we had
People are afraid of everything.
I had a discussion one day. We were talking about the issue of the grays that are supposedly, around, and the destructive ones and all that. And He said, well, what do you think about it? And I said, well, I think if your heart's in the right place, it don't matter. They can't touch it.
Anybody that's intelligent enough to move that quickly and with that much insight and love in their heart from one center of the universe to another, because we're out here in the middle of nowhere. The Milky Way's around us, and we're in the crossover point. That's one of the reasons why they come here. There's a lot of water, and there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of trade zones. There's just, we could talk for hours about what is and what isn't. However, they're working and always have been since the beginning of the cooling off of this planet and the settlement of people and seeds and animals and everything on it. To help direct where we're going, we keep destroying ourselves. Same thing, over and over, the destruction, the power, the greed. When we don't get any control over the things we need the most because politics won't let us. We don't need politics. We know how to run ourselves now. We don't need to pay 10 million people to tell us how to think. We know how to think. The minute you're born, you know the difference between right and wrong. You don't have to be spanked. You don't have to be played with. You know when you're doing something right, and you know when you're doing it wrong. Yeah. And you don't need anybody to tell you. You never have since you were born.
Yeah.
It's just
and that's
a matter
that
of choices.
Empathic, energetic level where it's just, you feel it.
Well, it's that energy. If you're in joy and happiness, you know that you're doing something right. You're in the right place. And the minute something becomes uncomfortable, you know that you're stepping into something that doesn't make sense, that is not easy, and that creates the disturbance and the fear.
If you could sum it up and give a pearl of wisdom to the audience, what would it be?
It's to really trust and have faith in the fact that we as human beings are very potent, and we have the capacity to love and create our own happiness. And it's just a matter of having faith in the self and having self unfold easily and with compassion.
Cool. Tom, we're almost out of time, so
Only thing I could say is I wish everyone on the planet could have seen what I've seen and have it in their hearts and see it the way it should be laid down, the way it came down, because it changed me drastically. And I think we can all vision it in our mind if you try hard enough. And that's, after all that's important.
Okay. Thanks so much. This time has flown, and I'm sure it has for our audience. Thanks for tuning in. Please, if you got any comments or questions or concerns, give us our best, or give us our worst, then give us our best, and how we can improve, and maybe we can work together. Thanks for watching One World. Please write us at P.O. Box 32035, Phoenix, Arizona 85064. Again, I'm Bruce Benefiel, also known as Zendor. Namaste.
Stand by, 30 seconds until the end of One World. $20 seconds. Stand by. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take